Welcome to You and Your Pets. I'm Jim Horton, and we're here with our resident expert, Dr. Ernest Rogers of the Maplewood Animal Hospital. And on this program, we cover a wide variety of topics related to pets, pet care, and also the life of a veterinarian. In this particular show, we would like to concentrate on what students need to become veterinarians or to engage in animal-related activities. So, Dr. Rogers, if I'm a high school student and I want to be a veterinarian, what should I do?
Dig in.
Dig in.
Dig in, because it's a hard ride to get into veterinary medicine or any other profession where you might be dealing with animals. And it's a hard ride. It's a lot of work, a lot more than anyone thinks to get into veterinary medicine, but to get out is even harder. So it's hard to make the cut to get into medicine, but then to get through medicine with that degree is pretty hard too. But there are other options and a lot of other options for people. But veterinary medicine is a lot of what our young people, men and women, want to do.
What is required for students entering a university if they're interested in being a veterinarian or in some animal-related specialty?
Well, I think if you're planning on going to university in the sciences in general, your high school curriculum should be challenging, it should be focused, it should be related to science with a good distribution of both volunteer activity and some of the arts. I was on the admissions committee for the University of Illinois, and I've reviewed a lot of applications for other universities, and what's being looked for is a well-rounded person with a really good academic background. So, if you're in university and you're a second-year student or a third-year student, you should be looking at taking the chemistries, the biologies, the physics. You should be well-versed in communication, so doing something like English literature or English composition, whatever you have to do to make yourself well-versed in communication. Because clearly as a veterinarian, though your goal is to improve the health of animals and in doing so improve the health of people, you have to be able to communicate with people. Communicating with animals is a different level, but communicating with people, you have to be able to explain what's wrong, explain how it's going to be corrected so that you don't run into issues down the road. So a really good background in the sciences, as I said, physics, well, all of them, physics, math, biology, and chemistry with fairly good grades. And I'm talking B plus and better, and a good smattering of communication skills, no matter what that might be. And then, of course, you want to have a little bit of a fallback onto the volunteer activities, whether it's with animals or with people, to show that you can actually work in the real world and communicate and interact with people on their level and help them and communicate with them.
Would you recommend that a high school student volunteer at a veterinarian's office, for example, to work with the animals there?
I think that's good if you can get that kind of a position. One of the problems with that is that animals can be very unpredictable, and it can be very dangerous to work in a veterinary office. So at least in my office, I've had experience with students coming in, and despite the fact I've told them how to act and how to be around animals, they will take dangerous animals out of the cage, and they're just lucky they didn't get hurt. Mm-hmm. So it can be very dangerous to do that. But that's not the only way to get experience. As I said, communications with people is a very, very integral part of being a veterinarian or being a zookeeper or being an animal control officer or being a veterinary technician. All these things require communication, both written and oral. So volunteering with animals at a shelter is a good way to get experience with animals. Mm-hmm. There are a number of handicap resources with children and adults who are handicapped who require aid in dealing with animals, whether it's the blind. The blind has an animal training school in New Jersey. There are a number of horseback riding or equitation support groups that help with children and adults with balance issues. And so they all need volunteers. It's not like as if they're flush with volunteers. They all need volunteers. That gives you both a little bit of animal experience, plus it gives you a way to interact with people who may not be able to communicate as well as you can. And it gives you an understanding of how people do communicate. So I would say, yes, it would be good if you could get a job or a volunteer position in a veterinary clinic. But veterinary clinics can be very dangerous. So a lot of times we don't have those positions available.
Okay. Now, turning to college, once a student gets into college, what kinds of courses should he or she be taking in order to aim to veterinarian school?
Well, typically once you get into university or college, your goal has to be to look forward to the universities that you may be eligible for. So for instance, if you're in New Jersey, you can consider any university in the United States, of course, although there are preferences, and because New Jersey does not have a veterinary school, there are certain programs that will allow you to go, say, to Tuskegee, where I graduated, Penn, Cornell, Virginia Tech, and I think they all have programs where if you're a New Jersey student, you get in-state tuition rather than having to pay out-of-state tuition. And each of those colleges get money from the veterinary facility or from the government, from the state government, to offset the difference in costs. So you have to look at the programs that you might be interested in. Different veterinary schools, for whatever reason, have different requirements. But in general, if you're in university, your first year should be an orientation year. Your first year, first semester should be an orientation semester. You should try and take some challenging courses, like your first calculus, maybe your first chemistry, and then fill in the rest with things that are going to give you communication background or interests that you have that aren't quite as heavy. Your second semester should be a little bit heavier into the sciences. By the time you get into your third semester, it should be mostly sciences. You start getting into the different universities that have veterinary programs, and when you look at them, you'll find out what their requirements are. You can get yourself very stuck in university if you put off, say, Calculus 1 until your second semester, and then find out that Calculus 2 in your third semester conflicts with Chemistry 1, and you can't take that. So now you might find yourself behind. Mm-hmm. And so you end up, and a lot of students do this, they end up getting a degree anyways. But for those who are really focused, want to get into veterinary medicine, they have to start planning from day one of university what they want to take. Unfortunately, we see a lot of students aren't well prepared out of high school, and some universities will require you to take certain courses, and now you have your full course load and you can't take other courses. So preparation going into first year has to be paramount on the student's vision. I think the second thing the student has to be really aware of is that veterinary medicine is but one goal. There are master's programs where you might work with animals. There are a number of technicians programs that you can get without going to university. You can go to a college. There are a number of programs where you can develop the good biology background. I think Rutgers has an excellent biology program, an excellent pre-vet program, and both of those can lead to other fulfilling careers working with animals. So when you're entering into university, take a wide range. Not everyone is going to end up being a veterinarian for numerous reasons. One, because they don't want to put in the work, because Calculus 1 almost killed me. Chemistry 1 I got through, but Chemistry 2 almost killed me. And so we end up doing things that we find we might not have an aptitude for, but that's fine. You can still work really hard and get through and get your B's rather than your A pluses. And you can still get into medical school, as I've proven, with B's and A minuses. But you have to be willing to put in that work to get those courses if you don't have the innate aptitude. So going into university, you need focus, you need stick-to-itiveness, as we talked about, to dig in, and you have to be able to plan 4 years in advance.
Okay, so what are the core courses that are necessary to complete a bachelor's degree in animal science?
And that's the trick. Animal science has a number of different courses that can, but not always, fulfill the requirements for medical school or for graduate school. Animal science, where I went to school in an undergrad in Guelph, animal science had some plant-based sciences that you had to take. So you had to take some not horticulture, but plant growth, foraging information. A lot of the animal science people that I knew actually took courses in bees, apiculture, because apiculture is an integral part of how you get your foraging materials.
Right.
They have large animal requirements. They have small animal requirements in animal science. You have to take some nutrition. And to get some of these courses, you need to take first chemistry, second chemistry, biochemistry, advanced biochemistry, depending, nutrition, anatomy, physiology, pharmacology, and those come in the later years. So if you haven't prepared in the early years, you don't get to that point. But all of these courses you have to take with a grain of salt, because, for instance, Virginia Tech's recommendations for getting into Virginia Tech might be a little bit different than Tuskegee's. Most of the colleges, at least 27 years ago when I got into medical school, longer than that, 32 years ago when I got into medical school, you were required to take the MedCat, the MCAT, the medical college admission tests. You had to take the VCAT, which no longer exists. You had to take the GRE, which is a graduate record exam, and all these preliminary testing facilities or testing instruments, sort of like your SATs. They say whether or not, and they put some weight on them. They give the admissions committee a little bit of information about how you work, how well you are with sciences, how you can absorb information. So when you're moving into university, you have to consider all these elements. You have to be able to take your MCAT or your GRE, and each university has different requirements. So if you take an animal science nutrition, that might be good. When I went to Tuskegee, I had everything except chicken course, a poultry course. So, I mean, that was sort of ridiculous, but I had to go online. I was able to take it online, and they allowed me in my first year with the guarantee that I'd take it online. So you have to be aware of what the university requirements are. They're all online. You can get them any place you want. If you're a senior student thinking about veterinary medicine, pick out 4 or 5 colleges.
Okay.
And look at their requirements.
When you started in college all those years ago, was it clear in your mind that you were going to go to be a veterinarian, or was it something that formulated as you were working your way through?
Well, my one uncle was a dentist. My other uncle was a physician, and I knew I didn't want to do either of those. Mm-hmm. My uncle, who was a physician, brought over an embalmed cat that he got from the school where he taught and gave me an opportunity to dissect it. But since about the age of 5 or 6, I've known I wanted to be a veterinarian. So my goal has always been to be a veterinarian. Okay. At 7 years old, I started working with a veterinarian. Back then, we didn't have the insurance and critical lawyers and all the other opportunities for lawsuits. So I worked, I got bitten, and no one cared. Today, it's a little bit different. So in my perspective, my focus has always been veterinary medicine. My dad was a chemical engineer, and I knew I didn't want to do that. I knew I wanted to do something in medicine. I've always loved animals. My parents have always brought me up to take care of animals. So in those cases, I was focused from the time I was very, very young, and made my way through and sort of diverted and went and ended up with 5 degrees instead of 2. But I did find my way into veterinary medicine as I wanted, yes.
Okay, well, we have to take a break. And right after the break, we'll come back and discuss this some more. This is You and Your Pets. I'm Jim Horton. We'll be right back.
In the past 50 years, we've made a lot of progress in smoking prevention. But if we don't do more, 1 out of every 13 children alive today will die early from smoking. That's 5.6 million precious lives we can save. Together, we can make the next generation tobacco-free.
We're back. I'm Jim Horton, and we're here with Dr. Ernest Rogers of the Maplewood Animal Hospital, our resident expert on you and your pets. And in this particular segment, we'd like to discuss other specialties other than veterinarian that one might become after getting animal science degree. Would that be accurate?
It would be accurate. I mean, you don't have to get an animal science degree to get into veterinary medicine. That's one route that a lot of very focused people will take. But you have to look at any degree you get as, what am I going to do with this degree if I don't get into veterinary medicine? What are my other options?
Okay.
And so there are a lot of other options. But personally, I got a biology degree. And within my biology degree, I did human anatomy, human pharmacology, human physiology, because those were the physiology and pharmacology courses I found most appealing. So we actually dissected a human body. And then I took mammalian anatomy, where we dissected animals. Not a popular thing today, but that is part of your education, getting into veterinary medicine. But you've got to think, if I get a bachelor in animal science, do I really want to be in that area? Now, any bachelor of science degree or undergraduate degree can give you opportunities to a lot of different things. My roommate from university got a Bachelor of Science degree. He's now selling medical instruments. He's very, very successful. They moved him from Canada to California. He's a VP of a huge company, probably making 5 times as much as I am. But he likes what he does, and he has an animal science degree. So given that you have a degree, you've proven to everybody that you can function and you can reach a goal successfully. So that's really what you need. But to get an animal science degree and then want to be a researcher, you're sort of looking at research within the animal field. If you get a biology degree and you want to be a researcher, maybe you'll be a researcher. Maybe you'll sell some biological instruments or biotesting. But by completing a degree, you've shown that you can reach a goal. So you still have to think, what am I going to do if I don't get into veterinary medicine? What are my other opportunities?
Okay, so what are some of those opportunities?
Well, there are opportunities for people who really can't handle university because it's not their learning environment. University is lectures and labs with minimal interaction with your professor. A smaller university might have more interaction, but not everyone can function like that. People get lost. They don't have good time management skills. They don't have good studying skills. They don't want to sit in a classroom. So the other options are you could go to a college. There are a number of colleges, one in Camden and one in North Jersey, in Bergen County, that have opportunities for people to become veterinary technicians. Now, veterinary technicians, like a nurse under a physician, veterinary technicians can be licensed, and that would be the goal of all veterinary technicians, or should be the goal. Once you've gone through your program, you study a sort of, I don't want to say watered down veterinary course, because you study surgery, but you study how to assist in surgery, not how to do surgery.
Right.
You study how to monitor anesthesia, not necessarily induce anesthesia or start it off. Some technicians are very, very good and they get more and more responsibility. But in general, as a technician, you're not going to be allowed to do procedures without the supervision of a veterinarian. So you may well assist in orthopedic surgery, and that's an integral part of surgery. What the veterinary technicians can do is integral to the success of the surgery. Anesthesia, similarly. Some veterinary technicians choose only to do oncology, or the ability to treat animals with cancer. Sometimes it's radiation, sometimes it's chemotherapy, drugs. Some veterinary technicians specialize in dentistry and do nothing but dentistry. Now, they can't do it without the supervision of a veterinarian or a veterinary specialist dentist, but they're still involved. They're doing the cleanings. They might not be doing the extractions or the bone grafting, but they're in there and they're helping. So any specialty that we have in veterinary medicine, neurology, orthopedics, soft tissue surgery, oncology, ophthalmology, any of the specialties that we have in veterinary medicine for veterinarians, a technician can specialize in. So you apply to a veterinary college, you get your veterinary technician's diploma, and then you come out and you decide what you want to do. Generally, most of them work in a large veterinary hospital with anywhere from 8 to 50 veterinarians, and they function as a nurse. And as they rise up the ladder, They have abilities to do something like practice manager, which means they do all the business for the practice. Some of them do things like specialize in ophthalmology, where all they're doing is dealing with eyes. That's it. They're dealing with one veterinarian who deals with eyes. They deal with one veterinarian who deals with dentistry. So they have those options. Some veterinary technicians want to be a generalist, and they want to be on the floor, so they do intensive care monitoring. And in that case, it's a fairly independent situation, but only the best veterinary technicians get into that position, where there might be a veterinarian at the other end of the hospital doing emergencies, but the veterinary technician is monitoring what's going on a minute-to-minute, hour-to-hour basis for each of the animals. Now, they're given parameters within which to work, but they actually have to do the monitoring and do the evaluations on their own. So as a veterinary technician, you have a little bit of autonomy, but always you're under the supervision of a veterinarian. If you're not interested in college, and sort of that's, I say college different from university. University I consider Rutgers. College I consider Bergen County. It's a 3-year program. It can be a 2-year program. You can also do it online for veterinary.
Community college.
At a community college, correct.
Yes, okay.
So you do that, and it's usually a 2 or 3 year program, and you get a diploma. Other options are for people who just can't handle the sit down and learn. There are animal control officer courses, which is, I think, a 1-year course on and off over a period of time. And there is one in New Jersey that allows you to learn the laws of animal abuse, how to write summons, how to evaluate animals, how to do an investigation. And if you're interested in police work and animal abuse, that's one of the options available. People who are more into business but still want to be around animals, program or practice manager. And a practice manager can be anything from a small practice with just one veterinarian, and you do all the billing, all the ordering, make sure that everyone who's hired is competent. You do the hiring and firing of technicians, and you work directly for a veterinarian, keeping the practice business aspects running. So if you're interested in business and you still want to be animals, that's another issue, or another method of following up with your animal interests. Other college courses are animal behavior. Now, again, you have to work under a veterinarian, but a lot of people become trainers, especially in police forces. They go in as a police officer, and they come out as a canine officer, and that takes some discipline, of course, and it depends on your ability and how well you do in the basic police work. But a lot of them will transfer into the canine unit, get a dog, and do canine drug searches, searches for, some of them search for bombs, some of them search for people. So there are lots of different aspects of police work working with dogs that will allow you to still have your animal fetish or animal interest and move on to other professions. So, but there you have to be a police officer first. You can't be a canine officer without being a good police officer first.
Just along that line, does the police officer who becomes a canine officer, do they have to go through courses on how to train your dog, or is the dog trained before they take it over?
Yes, both is true.
Both is true.
Most dogs, a lot of police dogs are trained elsewhere, and they're purchased by the department, depending on what they do. We don't always have protection dogs. Some dogs are protection dogs, and that's their goal. They travel with the police officer, they're their partner, and if the policeman, and there's been a number of cases demonstrated, if the policeman gets himself in trouble or for some reason is attacked, the police dog can take over as a partner and quell whatever else is coming in. These dogs are usually trained. They can be trained in North America. A lot of the better dogs have come from Czechoslovakia, Germany, and so they're trained that way. And then the police officer is trained to work with the dog.
Okay.
But there are trainers here in North America who train police dogs as well. But that's a separate thing. They're either ex-canine officers, or they are people who came from a background of training, usually the military, because the military use dogs quite often, usually the military, and they will train their dogs for whatever purpose it needs. For instance, if you're a canine officer and you have a bomb dog, you want what's called a passive alert. In other words, you want your dog, if it finds a bomb, to sit there and look at it. If you're looking for drugs, you want your dog to do an active alert where he's pawing at it. You don't want an active alert on a bomb because it can be devastating.
Right.
So we train dogs for different things. Officers are trained for different things. And as you know, I trained police dogs for about 5 years when I was in Virginia. So that training process is an ongoing process. It's usually 6 to 8 hours a month for each canine officer. And then if you're interested in other projects, I mean, you can go into the zoo work. We have the Popcorn Zoo here, and there are a lot of veterinary technicians who work at the Popcorn Zoo, but you don't necessarily have to be a veterinary technician. If you have a good biology background, they may find a position for you working with a certain category of animals. Mm-hmm. I worked at the San Diego Zoo, and a lot of the people who work there didn't get their first choice. A lot of people want to work with the tigers or the macaques or the gorillas, but those are sort of sophisticated animals. So you might start off working with marmosets or some of the rodents, or maybe even some of the tortoises, which are relatively easy to take care of. Mm-hmm. They aren't going to let you work with cobras. They aren't going to let you work with tigers when you get out of school. So again, it's a hierarchy of working with animals. And you have to be willing to work. You have to be willing to learn the nutrition and the signs of disease in these different animals. So zoo work is another option.
Okay. Well, we have only a couple minutes left. So to summarize what we've been talking about, to get into veterinary school is a very difficult proposition, and that one should always have a fallback in case one is not able to get in. But with the fallback, you can still work with animals in many different ways. Would that be a correct?
I think that's a correct statement in the sense that you really have to want to be a veterinarian more than anything else to give up basically your life for 8 years to make the grade to get into veterinary medicine and to make the grade to get out of veterinary medicine. Once you're out, you graduate with you can graduate with a couple of $100,000 in debt. So you want to make sure that that's what you want to do, because guaranteed when you get out, you'll be paying off that loan. It's like having a house when you graduate. Mm-hmm. Specialized training after veterinary medicine is always an option in all the areas we talked: ophthalmology, surgery, oncology, radiology, anesthesiology. So all those are options to the average person graduating from veterinary medicine, but you have to want to do it. You have to be willing to make that sacrifice to get in and get out. Some people choose not to do that, and they still want to work with animals, and there are all the other animals: the practice manager, the zookeeper, the animal control officer, the animal physician, animal technician, a breeder. A lot of people end up being breeders. A lot of people end up being trainers. And you can train animals and breed animals without having any other degree other than your love for that, but you've got to spend the time to learn how to breed, what to breed with what the health signs are. What you don't want to get yourself in trouble by breeding 2 inappropriate dogs and end up with puppies that are chronically sick. Mm-hmm. So there are lots of options, but to be a veterinarian, you have to want to be a veterinarian. You have to want to be a zookeeper. You have to want to, you have to pick what you want to do, and then you have to decide how much effort you're willing to put into it.
Okay, well, we've run out of time. I want to thank you very much for this. It was illuminating as usual. This has been You and Your Pets. I'm Jim Horton. Thank you very much.